Looks like we are. All right. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Robin Ice, Director of SoPA's General Legal Studies program, and we have a great program planned for you today. We are recording this for those who can't attend, and we will also be posting the recording on the General Legal Studies program Student Hub on Canvas, which if you haven't signed on to it yet, you must. We have a lot to cover today, but first I want to go ahead and introduce our panel. First, we have Michelle Craig, who is managing attorney of Transcendent Law Group in New Orleans. She's also founder of the mentoring organization Diversity Divas and so many other things in our community, and also on the SoPA General Legal Studies program faculty. We also have Susan Houssaye, who is SoPA's Senior Career and Professional Development Advisor and previously career counselor at LSU Law School and a recruiter at Sidley Austin and Gibson Dunn in New York City and Phelps Dunbar here in New Orleans. Jackie Epstein, who is a professor of practice in our General Legal Studies program at SoPA and also a founder of her own law firm and a longtime practitioner in family law. Also, Jonathan Foster, who is a judicial law clerk in Division G of the Orleans Parish Civil District Court and a member of the SoPA General Legal Studies program faculty, who earned his associate's and bachelor's degree in our program and his JD at Tulane Law School via the 3+3 program. And we also have Jordan Westerfield, who is an associate attorney in the law offices of John W. Redmann, LLC, and also a SoPA General Legal Studies program graduate. Yay. So I know you all have a lot of questions, and in the interest of time, we're going to ask that you save them to the end and actually drop them in the chat, which we'll be monitoring. And now I want to move on to our discussion topics because I know that's why y'all are here. All right, first, let's talk about preparing for and taking the LSAT. What are some challenges and also some tips for success?
So I would say probably the thing you want to do to prepare for the LSAT is take practice tests and time yourself. I used an egg timer because, as I recall, the tests were about 30 to 45 minutes apiece, and you want to be prepared to answer the questions in that time frame. The LSAT seems to be offered pretty much regularly every month, month and a half throughout the year. And there are several free accounts on the Law School Admission Council's website that you can sign up for, including Khan Academy and Law Hub, that offer basic tips and techniques as well as practice tests for you to prepare for the kinds of questions that are going to be asked on the LSAT. I think for a small fee, if I'm not mistaken, it's around $100 a year, you can upgrade to get 75 of the official tests, the previous tests that have been offered. And I would take those pretty regularly to sort of practice and get yourself acclimated with the testing procedure and the types of questions that are asked. Those questions, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges with the LSAT. If you had an infinite amount of time, it'd be a lot easier. So you have to manage the pressure of getting those tests done in that time frame. And I think that does really mimic law school exams with the same amount of timing to answer the questions. So I can't say enough about that. The other thing is that the LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council website, has numerous resources to practice, including Khan Academy, has a free LSAT practice site. So I highly recommend taking advantage of that.
I just dropped the lsac.org address in the chat for those of y'all who want it. What other comments about the LSAT? Anyone else?
I mean, I also took the LSAT a billion years ago. But I think we cannot stress enough, as we said, the timing and mimicking the circumstances under which you're going to take the test many, many, many times, because then your body becomes used to the stress that you will be under there. And there won't be added stress about being somewhere new, doing something new. And lastly, like the LSAT is not the end all be all. It's one piece of a huge puzzle. So if you put all your eggs in the LSAT basket and then it doesn't come out necessarily to where you wanted it to be in the scoring, that shouldn't uh, deter you, because there's a bunch of ways and a bunch of things that law schools look at. Do your best, try your best, definitely take practice exams. If you're a person who does well on tests, so you're like, oh, I do well on tests, I'm not going to study for this at all, I just highly recommend you don't do that, because this test is very, very, very different. And every person really who's taking the LSAT is a high achieving student in their previous life, more than likely. So everybody thinks I'm a good test taker. So make sure you're just filling the test out and do the best you can.
That makes sense. Anything else to add from the panel?
I do believe there is an exam coming up in November, I want to say. I think there's still time to register. Still plenty of time to study as well. So don't be afraid to just get out there and take the test, feel it out, see what it's like. Your scores are important, but really nobody ever talks about them again. I don't remember what I made on the LSAT. I know I got into law school, I passed the bar. That's really it.
That is a great point. That is that I think that is the whole point. I'm so glad you said that, Jordan, because it's not something that you're going to look back on or put on your Christmas card that year. It is a means to an end, and the end is law school and your career. So great. Well, I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is drafting a successful law school application, including your personal statement. And I would also add to this, getting those all-important letters of recommendation. So who would like to start with this one?
I can jump off that, Robin, if you like. So I think the most important thing, and I've done some admissions for my previous law school. I think the most important thing I look for in a personal statement when I'm looking at personal statements is, why are you choosing that particular law school? What programming do they have that really jumps out at you as to something that's going to help you enhance your ability to understand the law? So usually I like to see that based on an experience that a student may have had in their personal life or their work life or volunteering even, that kind of draws them to their goals with attending law school, and in particular that law school. I think that would probably be where I would advise students to start looking for the base for their personal statement.
That makes sense.
I like to say also regarding the letters of recommendation, I was really lucky in that, because I was a student at SoPA, and I was actually working when I was applying for law school. I was working for Jackie for one, and I was, and so she had offered to write me one, and then I was actually lucky, and I was this was a late career change for me, the law school and the practice of law, and I was lucky to meet several attorneys because I was attending SoPA in the General Legal Studies program. There were a lot of attorneys that were teaching, and actually a few of them offered. Two of them offered without my asking to write letters when I mentioned applying for law school, and it was because I spent time sort of developing a relationship with them just in class. I don't mean anything else. Just in class, I just talked to them. I asked questions about law school. I asked questions about the practice of law. I wanted to know what I was getting into, because I was interested in the topic, but I wanted to know what I was getting into. So beyond just actually getting what I was getting at school, I was interested in knowing my professors, and I got to know them, and through that, all of my letters of recommendation were written actually in connection with me personally, either through SoPA or, I think all of them were actually connected through SoPA. So that was really important to me. And then that connection regarding SoPA and my personal statement went hand in hand as well beyond the letters. When I was drafting my personal statement, it was actually one huge inspiration was a fellow student who has since gone on to law school, but who was wrongfully convicted and sent to Angola for years, and meeting Calvin here. And hearing his story and hearing the things that he went through, and then his attitude, his personality, his like drive to push and succeed and to see others succeed, and for justice as well. Those things all sort of combined, and that became a part of my personal statement, actually, because combined with some of the stuff that had occurred in my former life and former career, that issue and those in that inspiration, I should say, from Calvin, and then there were others as well, became a part of my personal statement.
I got to jump in and add that you probably don't know this yet, but Calvin Duncan, who graduated from law school last year and I believe has taken the bar or is in the process of, he's joined our faculty. He's going to be teaching criminal law for us starting in spring. I knew you'd appreciate that. Yeah, so we could not be happier. And I don't think we could have found a more inspiring person, because as you say, I don't think I've ever spoken with anybody more upbeat and positive and with a better outlook on life and law. So yay. But anyway, if you haven't taken criminal law yet, got to take it now. Spring.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, and anything else to add about the personal statements and letters of recommendation? Because these are kind of key facets, I think.
Well, about the application in general, don't lie. Don't lie, guys. Like, we're all lawyers.
Right.
And we have all the things at our disposal to find out that you're lying. So just don't lie. So that's number one.
Yeah.
With regard to the personal statement, don't lie. Because, again, also don't use Chat GPT, because that's become a thing where they're just spitting out something because it lies. Well, because you shouldn't use it, and because it lies. And the point of the personal statement is to learn about you. Like, everybody has some unique situation or some unique experience that made them want to go to law school. And we want to hear about that. What do you plan to do? What was your inspiration? Like, what gets to the heart of you? And nothing and no one can write that except you. So that's all I have to say.
That's fantastic. That is a lot. And I would also say, jumping off of one of your statements, Jonathan, developing and maintaining those good relationships with the faculty and other people that you're going to want to write those letters of recommendation is kind of key. Keeping a clean, I mention this to everyone who talks to me about law school, keeping a clean honor board slate, also key. Academic integrity is something that must be disclosed and is asked about. So it's really important to not only make good grades, do well on the LSAT, but also maintain a good persona and a good reputation in the community that we're all in. I want to move on next to the Tulane Law School 3+3, because this is an issue. This is a question, not an issue. It's a question. It's a program. It's a topic that comes up a lot for students, especially when they're just beginning. Tulane Law School, for those who don't know, offers a what's called a 3+3 program, and in it, students who have up to 90, between 90 and 105 credits and have taken the LSAT may apply to the law school before they graduate. And if they are accepted into the law school, into the 3+3, then they begin taking their first year law school classes, their 1L classes, as electives under their Bachelor of Arts degree. So the credit for those drops down, is billed at the undergraduate rate of tuition instead of the law school rate of tuition until you finish your 120 credits. And for students who are, going through at kind of a fast pace, it actually can turn out to be pretty close to a 3+3, 3 undergrad and 3 law school years. I must add, though, that if you're going part-time and you're only able to take a few classes at a time, it's really not going to be 3+3. And I also always want to mention to students that it's expressing interest in the 3+3 and talking to the NTC pre-law advisors, which is what we recommend everyone do, does not guarantee that you will be in the 3+3, because you have to apply to law school and be accepted as a student based on the criteria that everyone is. So it's pretty competitive. That said, I want to flip it over to Jonathan, who actually went through law school under the 3+3, and get your observations about it, because this is truly, truly a topic of great interest, I know, to our students too.
Yeah, thank you. So from the very first, I should maybe second semester at SoPA, I began to really kind of dig into the idea of law school and trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do, because like many SoPA students, I was non-traditional for sure. I was older. I had never finished my undergrad, so I was finishing that. I'm married. I had a child, and was not wanting to delay. If I was going to begin a career as an attorney, I did not want to delay any longer than necessary. So I began to really research, how can I cut time? So one of the things that I'd done, I committed, and I had a sit down with my family. At the time, I was working full time. I've always been working full time, and it feels like, and so I was working full time, and I was also going to school here, and I sat down with them and said, look, I'm not going to take the summers off. I want to get this finished. I want to get my bachelor's degree. Eventually, I decided I want to get my associate's degree, because that came with a paralegal certificate. And then right after that, I began work in a law firm, and like immediately as a paralegal. And while working in the law firm, continued my degree, my bachelor's degree, with a push toward that 3 and 3. When I began to understand that what I definitely wanted to do was law, I began to try to cut as many things as I could out, like extraneous things, because as you said, Robin, if you're not, if you're sort of doing this part-time, well, it's not actually going to be 3+3. And in my case, I really wanted that. I wanted, so I took SoPA as close to full-time, like time-wise, year-wise or semester-wise as is possible to do. I think I worked through every summer. I worked through every other semester. I went as long as I could, as much as I could, as many classes as I could take. I piled on to the point that it was actually probably ridiculous, and I probably needed a lot of therapy, but I saved that for after law school. Now I've got all the therapy I can handle. And so I approached that third year. And the one thing that I would say is, if you're prepping for this, first off, I can't recommend it any higher. I think it's fantastic. It cut an entire year off of my school career. Instead of 7, I only had to do 6, mostly. And I'm extremely grateful for that because, again, as I say, I'm traditional. I was older and I didn't want to take that extra year. I wanted to go ahead and push on through. So I did. One thing I would say is, as you're approaching that, as far out as you can, if you set your goal, one thing I missed was somehow, I can't even at this point remember, and it ultimately doesn't matter. One thing I missed was that I thought I had finished my everything I needed before I began my first year of law school. So I was accepted into Tulane. I started my first year of law school, went through that first year of law school, and realized as I approached the close, as I approached May, I realized I am missing 2 classes from finishing my bachelor's. So and they weren't law classes. So I chose 2 random classes to take during the summer. And what's really crazy is one, I think, and seriously, y'all, one was like Microsoft Office. It was like a real, like a no-brainer class. And there were people in the class who were actually there and had no idea about the ins and outs of Microsoft Office. I did. I still learned a ton. I definitely wasn't an expert by any stretch. So I learned a ton, but it was a much easier class. And then the second one was I took this class in botany that again, randomly, it sounded cool, it sounded fun. I did great. And the professor was amazing. And to the point where I've often said that if I hadn't taken that class, that botany class in my first year at SoPA, I would be a botanist now. Like, it was that much fun. It was an amazing class. But I'm not. I'm an attorney. So I finished those 2 in the summer and graduated. It was phenomenal. And again, as I said, I cut off that year, and everything else that Robin said, I'll just be quiet. But I think it was phenomenal, and I recommend it highly.
I should have mentioned, you reminded me, Jonathan, that one of the requirements is that you complete all of your required classes, your required undergraduate classes in your major and in your distribution and general requirements before you start. And we've had a number of applicants. You might have been one of them, Jonathan, who came up to the end and were short 2 science classes or something and had to really knock those out in the summer. We try to help keep track of those things for you in our advising, but we can't always. So if you are considering this, that's something that you really want to work with your advisor to make sure you're covering, because ultimately that falls to y'all. But that is about the 3+3, and I appreciate your input, Jonathan, because it's really firsthand and so helpful. And we can talk about it further if people have questions in the chat. But I think now we will move on to finding funding for law school, because let's face it, law school comes after undergraduate. You've already, unless you are paying for it as you go or you have other sources of funding, you're looking at a sizable amount of additional debt or just money. So let's talk about funding and about scholarships and any, I didn't designate anybody to start on this, but I will tell you that I went through law school on a lot of scholarships, because what I did was apply. When I went to law school, it was a bulletin board where things were posted, and I would see notices about scholarship available through a large, it was actually a cotton mill that was near Atlanta where I went to law school. They had a great scholarship. So I applied for a church scholarship, and things came through. So what I found was that there's money out there, but you have to take the time to apply for it. So that's my pitch for funding law school is don't be afraid to spend one day of your weekend filling out a very detailed application. Always follow all of the directions. If they want this statement or that, fill it out. And you can't go wrong, really, because you can continue using the format for each one that you apply for. Okay, that's all I got. Who else? Yes, Jackie.
I would double up with that. Finding outside resources is definitely a great idea. Look at the ABA, the American Bar Association. I know that they offer the Legal Opportunity Scholarship. I think it's about 20 students who receive it every year. The other thing is they have a pipeline initiative to help students who otherwise don't come from families with legal education histories have the ability to go to law school. I'm the first attorney in my family. I didn't know about that when I went to law school, and I wish I had. Another thing is in the summers, after your first year and your second year of law school, it's almost expected you're gonna work to develop your resume. And a lot of times you can save that money and apply it towards your living expenses the following year. And I would recommend you consider being pretty frugal that summer so you can contribute those funds towards some of your education expenses. And that's my best offer on that. We all have student loans. It's an expensive endeavor to become an attorney. I can tell you that it's one that I still feel was very rewarding. And if you look at it like you're going to be a business, your ability to practice law in and of itself is a business expense. If you were opening a restaurant or a dry cleaning business, you would have expenses. And the expense really is your tuition, learning how to do the job.
That makes sense.
I think I applied to law school and to scholarships. And at the end of it, the law school that gave me the biggest scholarship was where I wanted to be, was where I went. I mean, I think there's some intricacies there, but those two things, like, there's no reason to go, there's no reason to turn down money unless there's a specific reason that you want to go to a specific school. That's number one. And there are scholarships out there for being left-handed. There's scholarships out there from women lawyer organizations. Jacqueline mentioned the ABA. Also, the state bars have different scholarships out there. I think you probably can put a Google alert on law school scholarships, and it'll start sending you different scholarships that you may or may not be eligible for, but some of them you will be. So I mean, I would say take advantage of that. And then about the working in between this first and second year of law school, like, that is an excellent time to save up money. But I caution you, if you don't get a internship at the biggest firms, that's okay. Like, getting an internship anywhere. And if you are clerkship, and if you don't get a clerkship at some of the smaller firms, find the Innocence Project, find these places, because what you want is the experience on your resume. And then another thing I did, I became a TA for one of my professors in law school, which also paid some of my expenses and was a very rewarding experience. That's going to come out of your personal relationship with your professor. But if there's an area that you're really interested in and you want to be like in there learning about it more, one of the ways to do that is to become the TA for the professor so that you can help them with it and learn more about that area. You may discover that you love it. You may discover that you hate it. But either way, you have discovered something about what you want to do, and you've made some funds to help you in law school.
And that's a great credential, that research assistant. It sticks with you, I think, forever. Anything else to add on this? Because I think it's really important. I know that you all probably I know what I want to mention. ABA. Every year, I think I send out, and I'll make sure I do it again. ABA has available a student membership rate, which I want to say is, well, it's low. It's maybe $20 or $25. I'll send you all the notice, and and we will all know, but it is a reduced rate, and it gives you access to so much information about scholarships, about if you want to work as a paralegal for a little while before you go to law school, paralegal jobs. Of course, we send all sorts of information about that too, but it's an incredible resource, and that will help you tremendously. Also, you'll want to scour that Law School Admissions Council, that lsac.org site. Just dig into that very, very deeply, because there's all sorts of information on there about not only about the LSAT and, you know, retaking and what counts, and what each school requires as a minimum score. There's just a ton of information, but it's all drawn together in one place. So it's a great resource. I can't recommend it highly enough. And the more you dig into it, the more you find. So that's a good place. And let's see, the next thing that we have to talk about specifically is surviving that crucial first year of law school. It's notorious that the first year of law school is very difficult. Everybody takes the same classes. It's usually large sections. It's usually it's tough subject matter, because unless you graduated from the general legal studies program, a lot of the stuff is topics that you've never heard of. You have a leg up, of course, being in our program, but it's still very intense, because students find that the instructors expect them to have read everything before they get even to the first class, that you will be called on, that you won't be praised for having the right answer. You will be asked another question to see if you really have the right answer. So it's very difficult. And hence, we have people on here who can help you with some advice about that. So I wanted to flip this over to you, Jordan, and get your take on it, and then we'll all chime in. But I think this is something that is not that recent, but kind of recent for you.
Oh yeah, my first year of law school was 2020, 2019, 2020 school year. And it's kind of everything they make it seem to be. The professors will kind of make it difficult. They try to scare you a little bit. Actually, my first day, this is before law school even started, we had like a boot camp. And Judge Shepard was a part of it, and she called on me. I was the very first person she called on. She expected us to read they gave us a little packet. It had a couple scenarios in it, and I was like, oh, it's just a orientation, nothing a big deal. She put us in a circle, called on me, made me stand up. I did not know what was going on, and she told me to leave. And this was just an orientation. So, but me and her are very close to this day. We both remember it, laugh about it now. When I see her in court, it's always a smile and how you doing? So she made sure I prepared myself for everything from here on out. But the first year, it's competitive, difficult. As long as you do what you're supposed to do, study, take the time to read things. It is time consuming. It may seem like it's impossible, like it's a lot to do, but I think everyone in here can do it if you put your mind to it.
That's great. What do you think, Jonathan? You probably want to unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel similarly about it. I thankfully I didn't have the first day get sent out, but I did. Imposter syndrome is a real absolute thing, and I always thought that I had just a tremendous ego, and I'm sure that I do. I'm an attorney, so I think it's part of the job. But when I got to law school, my first year, first semester, I learned quickly that, as someone has already said, and I'm sorry I can't remember who, that when you get there, you're one among all other extremely high achievers. You're just one. And I was used to being top of my class in everything I did, always, all my life, no matter that I was an older student. By the time I got to SoPA, I was over 40, and but I was still number one in the class because, whatever, it's just what I did. But when I got to law school, everyone was number one in the class, and you just had to up your game a bit, and you had to strategize, and you have to really focus in, set your goal out there, strategize, and then talk to people. Find your group, find a group, any group. Start talking to strangers randomly, asking them, "What's your strategy? What is your strategy? How do you, prep for this class?" And seriously, lay ego aside, lay pride aside, and figure out what you're going to do to make it through. And the reason I say that is because if you're not careful, some of that is intended to sort of, frighten you onto the right track or whatever can really mess with you and mess you up. And you don't want that. You want to succeed. You want to move forward. You want this to just be a speed bump, and maybe a focus factor instead of an obstacle that you can't get around or get over, because there's no such thing, frankly. Every obstacle you can get around, you can get over, you can get under, you can get through it some way. It is possible. Somebody before you has found a way and made a way for it to be possible. You more than likely do not have to reinvent it. You can find a way. And the last thing I would say regarding your first year is, no matter what happens, do not neglect yourself. Don't neglect self-care. Don't neglect your physical self, your mental health, your emotional health. Make certain that you find time, make time. In fact, I would say, over and above all of your reading and study for class and study for everything you do in your first year of law school, focus on you. Focus on, social health, emotional health, mental health, and physical health.
Still trying to learn how to do that.
Yeah, me too.
Even now. We're having a lot of questions in the chat, but I want to move on to something that is always on our minds, and that is finding your first job. And I'm going to pop this over to Susan, because this is her area. I mean, we've all been in it and we'll all chime in, but this is her area of expertise. So Susan, if you would, tell us about the importance of building a relationship with your career counselor while you're in law school or in SoPA, building your bonds with your classmates, the people you're going to see the rest of your lives, really, and how to interact with recruiters and so on.
Certainly. So when I worked at LSU Law School, I just found that, a lot of times the students shy away from the career services office, but many of them this was 10 years ago, I've stayed in touch with and followed them along with their career, and also guided them out of attorney positions into in-house counsel positions. So if you have the opportunity to bond with a career counselor at the law school that you're attending, it can be really beneficial. And, they're going to be your motivators and your biggest cheerleaders. And it never hurts to have an extra set of eyes, read over your resume, read over your cover letters, any sort of personal statement, diversity statement, because you can read it a million times and not realize there's a mistake. I do it all the time. I'll send a text or an email and I'm like, oh my gosh, I spelled that word wrong, or I missed a word. But we're all moving at such rapid rates. So the students who came into my office most often were the ones who were top of mind when a job opportunity came across my desk. So I would just send it straight to them. I'd be like, well, I know James is looking for this type of position. And so I would feed it to them. But it was because they had come to meet with me and they told me what they were looking for. And, it was great for students to get involved in student organizations, and also what you all were saying about building bonds with your classmates is so important. You're going to see these people for the rest of your lives. So no matter if you want to or not, you're going to. They're going to pop up everywhere. So it is really important to not get involved in the drama, because there is a lot, and just really be professional. And so when I was a recruiter at law firms, speaking about when, professionalism is so important. And a lot of times the law students who we would have as summer associates would get really comfortable with me. But what they didn't realize was I was sitting in the room when hiring decisions were being made with the partners who were on the hiring committee. So you have to kind of toe the line with the recruiter. They're fun. They're bringing you to social events. They're taking care of you for the summer and keeping an eye on you. But they are also part of your interview process. It is a 6-week interview process. In New York, it's 10 or 12 weeks. So you have to recognize that while they might become your friend, they work for the firm. So you have to keep a professional relationship with them. And my biggest advice, I would say this, I used to do a 3-day orientation for our summer associates at Phelps. And at the end of the 3 days, I knew everyone was exhausted. And I would say, okay, if you all did not listen to anything I said over the past 3 days, just listen to this. And it was be responsive. If someone sends you an email, just reply. It can be thank you. It can be I'm working on it. It's so comforting when someone just acknowledges your email and you know that they're working on it. And if you're ever left with nothing to do, you also need to raise your hand and say, I don't have an assignment right now, because you don't want a week to go by and then the recruiter's like, well, why didn't you tell me? So just to be your own advocate, but also be responsive. That was a big struggle, because a lot of the attorneys are older and they're used to the going back and forth over email. Got it. I'm working on it. Make sure you know if there's a deadline. If you have questions, ask those questions. But definitely use your recruiter as a resource. If there's a question you don't want to ask an attorney, ask the recruiter first. And usually they'll be able to help you. But just also have professional boundaries with the recruiter, because they are talking to the attorneys the entire summer. So
Everything is an evaluation.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think this also applies if you're applying for some of the many paralegal jobs that we send notices out about, or if you have an internship that you're working on. All this is applicable to that. The advice is going to be pretty much the same, but responsiveness, I would say, is right up there. When it carries through in the classes too. What else on this issue from y'all? Well,
I want to go ahead.
Yeah, no, please. Because you hire, I know you're in the position to hire.
I want to just reiterate the responsiveness. Just saying received, got it. If I think that, students don't realize that they may, in their head, they may have said, I got it, I'm going to work on this. But if you don't communicate it via that email to that attorney that you're working for, they don't know if you have it. And they have so many things going on in their organization, in their head. If they, like, I own it. So I'm doing the marketing, I'm doing the billables, I'm getting the clients. I don't have time to sit up in bed and wonder, they didn't respond. So are they going to do this? Or now am I going to have to stop everything? the responsive clerkship, our clerk, intern, paralegal, they win every time. So when you're responsive and it's wrong, like you get some grace because they're gonna come back and say, oh, okay, that's not quite what I meant, but thank you for that. Let's do this. But the fact that you're responsive, but if you don't respond and you're wrong, you're not gonna be there for a while, for too terribly long, because it's just too hard to be worried about what someone is doing. And then in these clerkships, remember, like I I clerked a zillion years ago, and it was like camp. I don't know how it is now, right? At these big firms, they go to dinner all the time. There are all these receptions. The zippers were here, went to baseball games. It was insane. But the point was to see how you act in different situations. So at these receptions, there's unlimited alcohol. It's unlimited party. Sometimes the party heads down Bourbon Street. Why? I don't know, but it does. But that doesn't mean that just because you can drink unlimited that you do, right? It doesn't mean that you don't remember that all eyes are on you, because they are. We had several situations in our class where people were in the top of the class, but these social interactions where they went very, very awry ended up making sure they didn't get clerkships or jobs at all, because these firms, and even me with a smaller firm, like every time you go somewhere, like you represent the firm. So if you take it sideways, or you are not professional, or you do something um, questionable, and I know that's all up for interpretation, but I think we all have a sense of what you should be doing on a clerkship and what you shouldn't be. If you think, I don't know if I, stop right there and don't. Just that's the key right there. So that's what I would say about that.
I think that's great advice, because you don't really have a second chance. It's a competitive world. And if it does go awry, as you said, Michelle, you don't have a second chance. There's not a way to come back from something where your judgment is called into question, because there's somebody else willing to take that spot and probably ready, who didn't make a mistake. So it's kind of unkind, but so true. Before we move into our questions that are in the chat, I wanted to ask you, Michelle, to tell us a little bit about Diversity Divas. And you have an event coming up this fall, and I want to make sure that students know about this.
Sure. So when I started in the practice, like Jacqueline mentioned, I was a first generation lawyer. Like I've had cousins who were lawyers, but not people I could really talk to about what this looks like, what the practice of law entailed. So there were a lot of firsts, which means there was a lot of uncomfortable moments, and there were a lot of experiences that no one could teach you. You just had to have the experience, because there was no one who had it in my world. So we created this organization that brought professional women together to talk about kind of the things that you don't get taught in school, because they're not school related things, the etiquette things, the talking to a partner, talking to another associate, dealing with interoffice conflict, learning about like the different types of law, because of course in law school you definitely learn that there's transaction and there's litigation, the big two, right? But there's so much underneath all of those. I had no idea. So the point of the organization is to bring people together so that the students, the mentees, can ask the mentors questions about all of these things. And the only caveat that we have is that you be extremely honest about your experience. So for the mentors, if you gave up something, if, in my day, I remember some of my colleagues pushing back having children until after they made partner, because of the track and because of the billable hour requirement that you would not fulfill, maybe if you had a child in between those years. So there were questions about, okay, if if you did that, how you feel about that now? Like, was it worth it? Was it not? What would you do differently? Like, it's very interesting information that we don't feel like we would have gotten otherwise. So we started the organization, and every year we have a tea, and we bring the mentors and the mentees together, and we just talk about these things, and we talk about a lot of what we talked about uh, on this webinar. Um, Female lawyers come together with the young ladies who are in programs, either undergrad in a SoPA program or in their first years of law school, and talk about what these things look like. Our next diversity legal, which will focus on law, will be October 21st. We sent the invite out yesterday. We have a list of the people who are attending here. So if you would like to attend, you'll get an invite. Just RSVP, because it's a space limited situation, since it's really high tea. But it's a good, interesting, informative time that I think I've never heard anyone say they didn't receive some value from it.
Yeah, I attended last fall's law tea, and I was just blown away. It was so positive and so inspiring. I'm going to move on now to the questions in the chat, and we will run through these. The first few, obviously, or the first couple relate to the LSAT. One is, I recently took the LSAT. If I want to take it again, will the two scores be averaged or the higher score be kept? And what would you consider to be an average score that law schools are looking for? I can answer the last part of that, and in answer to that, I totally recommend that you go to the lsac.org site, and there you will see the ranges that the law schools are requiring. I think the scores that you can get on the LSAT are between 120 and 180 now. It was different from when I took it, but each school, or pretty much every school, has on the LSAC site the range of scores and the GPA the minimum GPA that they require or expect or hope to get. But as Michelle, I think earlier said, there are so many factors that go into it. It's not just the grades or the LSAT, it's many things, but you'll find all that information on there. Can anybody respond to the part about the scores being averaged? I know that is also on the LSAC site, but I forget what it says, to be honest.
Back when I took it, it was averaged. I don't know if it's changed.
Yeah, I think that's right. What do you think, Jordan?
I'm not sure. I only took it one time, so I never looked into that. But I'm not sure at all.
Yeah, I don't know either. I guess I only took it once and I didn't know. But anyway, I know that information is on the LSAC test, on the LSAC site under taking the LSAT. So I'd recommend that. How far in advance should you take the LSAT before applying to law school? Well, it's only good for a couple of years, so not too early, I would say. When would you say, senior year?
I would leave myself an additional test time before the application deadline. I also think if you can early apply, you're probably better to do that. So I would prepare probably in the summer for the first test and in the early fall for the second test. I think that's generally the timeline for admissions.
That makes sense. That's a help.
I also think that it should be determined by the classes you take too. Like, I think taking a logic class makes sense. A philosophy class, some of those classes that really help you learn how to analyze. I think there's value in those. So depending on when you can take those classes is when I would schedule the exams.
That's great advice. And you can take those classes through SoPA. The philosophy classes count as humanities, by the way. And there's introduction to philosophy. There is ethics. There are several. There used to be elementary symbolic logic. I hope they still offer that in the SoPA program. all those things are incredibly helpful. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because you can get help and it'll stick with you for the rest of your life, actually. Here's another question. What if you primarily take online classes and do not have face-to-face interaction with your professors to build a relationship and potentially receive a letter of recommendation? Who can I turn to for letters otherwise? Well, I will tell you, even though they are online classes, you can build a relationship. That's what those discussions are for. That's what attending those Zoom sessions are for. You can also reach out to the professors. That's another thing. Always, you can email, you can say, I'm doing this. It doesn't have to be a face-to-face interaction. Anything else on this?
I
Absolutely.
regularly, go ahead, Jackie.
I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I regularly give letters of recommendation to people who come through the internship program. I also regularly, like I teach with the program. Some of my paralegals come through my class. Some of them are on the Zoom today. And so there are lots of ways to get the letters of recommendations that you need from the people that you're doing good work for and with, and that you develop a good relationship. It's not really about that person being a professor. It's really about that person having a good relationship with you and knowing your abilities as it relates to the abilities that a law school would be looking for.
And to follow up on that, Michelle, I was going to say the same thing. If I see that you're a diligent student and you're working hard and you're turning over good work to me, I may have some questions that fill in about your background that I want to include in your letter of recommendation. But I the fact that you're a diligent student in my course, I think is a good start to writing that letter.
Great advice.
I'm sorry. I think you could also get letters from your employer. When I did it, I got one. I worked at a law firm while I was attending SoPA. I got one from the managing partner at the firm I was at, and I got one from a professor at SoPA. But you need to make sure that you have a good relationship with the professor and that you are also, doing well in their class and showing up. Don't just ask for one just to ask one because you need it.
That is incredible advice, and yet another reason to have those good relationships with your professors, because they can help you, and their work. Everybody that is on our faculty is working for your success. So thank you for saying that, Jordan, because I think that's really, really important. Another question. So for the 3+3, you're overlapping your final year of getting your bachelor's with your first year of law school. Yes, you are. That is what you're doing. And the credit for the classes drops down to your bachelor's and takes the place of electives, general electives. Because this is how that 3+3 works, this is one of the reasons why people who take the 3+3 or are, let me back up, people who are accepted into the 3+3, because it's not an automatic thing. If you're accepted, then you probably want to give up on or just drop out of taking a minor, because the minor takes up a lot of your elective credits that you won't have if you are starting law school early. So it's it's not a lot to give up, but it's something that we always advise. Here's a great question. Where did you all go to law school, and why did you choose that institution? I went to Georgia State in Atlanta. I went there because they had a part-time program, and I was teaching public speaking, and I had a 2.5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and part-time was the only way I could do it. Who else?
I went to Georgetown. I went there because they have an international law program, and part of my practice area is international child abduction.
I went to LSU. I went to the place that paid for it. There was a pure financial decision, kind of. And LSU has a summer school in France program that I was interested in going to, and I did, and it still remains one of the top 5 things I've ever done in life.
All right. And Jordan?
I went to Southern University Law Center. It was more financial for me, and that's really the only reason.
And an excellent reason. It's an excellent reason, and it's why many of us make that choice. Do you have any legal/lawyer mentors to help legal studies students who are aspiring to attend law school or work in the legal field? Well, I would say all of us and every one of your professors. That's what we're all here for. And Susan, and yeah, all of us. I would say that's what we're here for. And you can ask the question of anybody. Our faculty is comprised almost entirely of practicing lawyers or people who did practice. So we got some info about that, and we're happy to pass it on. And we'll also pass you on to people like Jordan and to others who have done it, and make sure that you have fresh information about it. And finally, what criteria is needed for law school? Again, I would recommend take a look at that lsac.org website, because they really go into that in depth. But I always tell students, it's your GPA, it's your LSAT score, it's your activities, it's the whole package that you present in your application. Anything else that y'all want to add to that before we
I just
sign
want to
off?
say, I think the reason has to be right. Why you want to go to law school.
Yeah.
Law schools are pretty good at figuring out whether you really want to go to law school because you want to make a change in the world or help people, versus you're trying to, sort of like please your parents or impress your neighbors or what it might be. So I think that that's something that really comes through when you're looking at a student's whole package. So I think, and it's a big decision. You want to make sure you're making it for the right reasons, because once you do, it becomes a part of your life for the rest of your life. So
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you all so much. It's 1:04, and look at us staying on the clock so well. I'm very proud of us. You can tell everybody's been under billable hours. We all know this. But anyway, thank you all so much. Our panelists, we've been working on this for several months, and I'm just so grateful for your participation and the knowledge that you brought to this, and your willingness to share with our students. And it's just, it's been a joy to work with y'all. Participants, we have recorded this and we will make it available. As I said, we'll send it out to everybody who is on this, and I will send it out via the Salesforce listserv to all active students, and we'll post it on the General Legal Studies Hub, which is on Canvas. And if you haven't joined it, you gotta. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all so much. This has been a lot of fun and a lot of incredibly good information. And we will see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.